All right, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining Games History Hour, a free virtual program from the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum and the International Society of Olympic Historians. We are so glad that you have joined us today for our program, Uncovering the Ancient Games. Games History Hour is part of our commitment to sharing the stories of the Olympic and Paralympic Games in meaningful, accessible ways to audiences everywhere. Now, programs like this are made possible through support from our community. Donations and memberships directly help us to continue offering these free programs and bringing Olympic and Paralympic stories to life in this format. For our program today, I am so excited to welcome two amazing speakers and historians, Dr. Christian Wacker and Dr. Konstantinos Georgiadis. And I'm sorry, Kostas, I know I butchered your last name. Please forgive me. Dr. Christian Wacker is an archaeologist and sports historian specializing in ancient sports and Olympic history. He's the author of 15 books, has organized roughly 30 international expositions, and serves as the president of the International Society of Olympic Historians and as a member of the IOC Culture and Olympic Heritage Commission. Kostas is a professor at the University of Peloponnese, and I'm sure I butchered that too, apologies again, and Dean of the Faculty of Human Movement and Quality of Life Sciences. A leading scholar on Olympic history and pedagogy, he served as Dean of the International Olympic Academy from 1993 to 2004 and has been its honorary dean since 2005. He's a longtime IOC Commission member, a founding member of the International Society of Olympic Historians, and was part of the Athens 2004 Organizing Committee. Now, throughout our conversation today, we invite audience members to submit questions using the chat. Also, throughout the program, we'll be putting some images and resources in the chat as well. So let's dive right in. My first question is for both of you. What are some of the similarities and differences between the ancient games and the modern games that we know today?
So if you allow me, Kostas, I will start. I think let's speak a little bit about the biggest differences between the ancient Olympic Games and the modern Olympic Games. Number one, and this is the most important of it, that the ancient Olympic Games, they were a Greek religious and competitive festival. On the other side, the modern Olympic Games, they're an international sporting movement, and they are built around universal ideas. Another thing which is also very important is that in ancient Olympia, which is located in the Peloponnese and the western side of the Peloponnese in Greece, the festival was always connected to the cultic activity of Zeus. So they always had been embedded into a religious festival and a religious sanctuary celebration. It brought the Greeks together and they celebrate their cultural identity. This is a big difference towards the modern time. And the modern international movement is to promote peace internationally and also the brotherhood in the modern sense. And the third thing which I wanted to emphasize is that the modern Olympic Games, they're international and they're universal. In ancient Olympic Games, they served to unite the Greeks. So who was not Greek was not allowed to participate in those ancient Olympic Games. I'm sure that we go a little bit further on and will explain a little bit more about how this festival will be organized later on. I don't know, Kostas, if you would like to add something to that.
So I would like to add just only that the games, the ancient Olympic Games and the modern Olympic Games, they are organized every 4 years. That is similar by both games. Also, one of the differences is that the ancient Olympic Games they were always organized in ancient Olympia. And in the modern Olympic Games, we have always a different host city and country. So that is what I would like. Also, that the prize in the ancient Olympic Games was an olive wreath, which was called Konstantinos. In the modern Olympic Games, we have the three metals called silver and bronze. Both winners, they were celebrated and were in ancient and modern games are considered our heroes who reach excellence.
And if I may add as a small point, because I saw right now popping up a small note about the women, because we mentioned the exclusivity of the ancient Olympic Games. Exclusivity also means that not everybody was allowed to attend the Olympics. So women were not allowed to attend the Olympics. And if we have a little bit more time, later on, we can say something about women and the ancient Olympics as well.
Please.
Another point that now came to my mind is technology and commerce. Essentially, they were absent from the ancient Olympic Games. Now the games with AI and the new technologies that are more influenced in the last, especially in the last decades. But I would say probably also Olympia, when the Olympic Games were organized in the ancient time, Olympia were a place that they were presented new technologies there.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to ask that. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, because we are just throwing the things idea, because an example comes to my mind, Kostas, regarding the presentation. There was a very famous presentation about the 3rd century before Christ of somebody who was a fencing. He was a fencing teacher, and he has new technologies of fencing. And he was waiting the 4 years, which had been mentioned, to go to Olympia, because this was a perfect place where he could show to the entire world his new fencing technology. So Olympia was a very important place, because this was a time before AI, before modern technology forms of communication. So you had to go to somewhere to meet the other places. And I think this underlines a little bit the things about new technology. So quite important, I guess.
Another point is the Olympic truce that we have not mentioned, and is very important by both Olympic Games. In the ancient time, the pilgrims they could safe travel between the city-states, even if they were in the war. In our days, the Olympic truce, I would say, promote symbolically the ideal of peace.
That's a lot. There was a lot of great information there. I was making notes the whole time you were talking, and there are multiple things that I want to come back to. So first off, Christian, you mentioned the ancient games were both a religious festival and an athletic competition. So when you think about the modern games today, has the Olympic movement developed its own sacred values, rituals? Is there any reflection in the modern games today of that religious festival philosophy?
Yes, in order to answer this question, I mean, it's a very important, but also a very complicated question. If I may, I only draw a little bit, if we dive in history, to go back to ancient Olympia and imagine a little bit what happened there. And what happened there is that during a time of more than 1,000 years, only imagine that the modern Olympics, they took place only since 1896, so 130 years. During 1,000 years, athletic competitions took place in the grove and in the sanctuary of Olympia. Olympia was not a city. Olympia was a sanctuary. And it developed like most of religious places from a very small spot to an international visible place. So in the beginning, there was nothing. There was a holy hill, and there had been some offerings taking place around that. And then from time to time, the people who live in the vicinity, and later on the people who lived all over Greece, they came to the place because it was regarded as a very important place. You can compare it to something like Lourdes, to something like Fatima for the Catholic for the Catholics, or like Mecca for the other people. So everybody goes there. But this developed during the times, and not from the beginning, but only on a certain time. And this is in the 8th century before Christ. They started to do small competitions, and then the calendar of the competitions, they grow. And in the Hellenistic times, which is the time of Alexander the Great and afterwards, and in the Roman times, they had been extremely important. And the festival, they overrun the Holy Grove and also the religious festival, even though the athletes, they were always running in favor of Zeus and for Zeus. And so this is something I only wanted to emphasize. This is something which is important to understand about the ancient games, because the means of the ancient games are always had been religious. And when Pierre de Coubertin comes and with his compatriots, he started to build the modern Olympics, he put out eclecticistic, I would say, bits and pieces of ancient Olympic games towards his knowledge, and brought them into the modern Olympics. But he also said that the modern Olympics should be modern. He does not want to revive the antiquity. Dead things, he said, should be dead. He wants to have new games, but all the philosophies, all the beautiful things of ancient times, he implemented into the modern Olympics. So this is only in a nutshell, and I know that there is much more to say, but this is, I think, a very important topic, because this is the transfer of ancient times to modern times. And I'm sure Kostas has something to add on this as well.
Actually, if we go back to the Philostratos, he's reporting that the event, the ancient Olympic Games, they started as a ritual, lighting the fire of the altar. So the athletes, they were running one stadium far away from the altar, and the first one was lighting the fire in the altar of Zeus. And as Christian said, we do not know exactly when these games they started. So the history, it starts in the 8th century of the ancient Olympic Games, but we have connected with the beginning of the Olympic Games in the ancient time with different myths. One of the main myths is the myth of Inomos and Pelops, about the genesis of the ancient Olympic Games. And all these myths, another myth is the fight between Zeus and Kronos about the power of the world. Another myth is connected with Hercules of thieves. All of these myths that are connected with the different tribes that they came to Olympia, and they wanted to connect their tribe, their history with the beginning of the Olympic Games. So, and as Christian said, the Olympic Games in the beginning, they started as a local event, and later they become regional with the participation of the 3 cities, Sparta, Elis, and Pisa. And we had this discourse of Ekechiria, of the Olympic truce, an agreement between the cities to organize the games and to leave all the pilgrims to travel from different places to visit Olympia. Elis was explained as a sacred place, and during the Olympic Games they should not start new wars. And of course, the games they were connected with many ceremonies and rituals, which we feel even today if we visit the archaeological site.
Please go ahead.
I would probably say rituals we have also in the modern Olympic Games. Pierre de Coubertin used to repeat that we have revived the Olympic Games, but we have not revived the real reason. So in the core of these Olympic Games is pedagogy. So using the Olympic Games to educate the young people worldwide. And we have rituals. We have the Olympic ceremonies, opening and closing ceremony. We have the torch relay. We have the Olympic flag. We have different symbols. We have the Olympic motto, Situs Altius Fortius. So we have all these rituals that are connected with the modern Olympic Games.
So when we think about the ancient games, we've obviously learned quite a lot about them. How do historians and archaeologists learn more? What are the sources? How does that work?
Yes, I mean we have different sources. We have some levels of sources. Of course, the first sources are the written sources, and for Olympia, the most important source is Pausanias. So he was a writer of the 2nd century after AD. And he visited Olympia, and he was strolling around Olympia. And let's say 80% of the information we have about Olympia, we have from Pausanias. So this is the first lecture. And this is also quite interesting what you said, because he was forgotten. I mean, those writers from the ancient times, they all had been forgotten, and they had been rediscovered in the Middle Ages. So once those writers had been rediscovered, also the interest on Olympia and also on the Olympic Games started with them, when it started century by century. So this is one source, and this is, I would say, one and the most important sources, because all the stories we are telling you, most of them, they go back to these writers. Pausanias is only one of them. We don't have to go into details. But what's also quite important, those are the excavations. And only from the starting of the excavation, which goes back to the 70s of the 19th century. So we celebrated already 150 years of excavation in Olympia. So the excavation go back at that time. And since there's this excavation, we got so much knowledge about them. We can compare with the writers. And comparative archaeology is something which is extremely important. And only recently we can add other things. We have drones where we can fly over areas and discover new things. We have physical instruments to go into the earth and discover things. And with this means, we try to get out more and more about archaeology. But having said that, it takes time until you discover something new. And for example, I was digging in Olympia, and my PhD was done in Olympia in the 90s, so 30 years ago. And I have to say, until today, things happened, but the main things stays and remains. So we are discussing very much details, which will be transferred to the interested audience only bit by bit.
So research is still continuing. What is something that you would hope to learn, or what's a question you would hope to get an answer to?
Actually, May I add something? So we have
Please.
different sources about learning about the ancient Olympic Games. As Christian mentioned, the first one is historiography, and then we have epigraphy. So epigraphic information that we find in different places there. We have also information from the coins, from the participation of different athletes and kings that participate. Also papyrology, which is very important nowadays because of the new technologies. We can read very old papyrus, and of course archaeology and excavations that we had in Olympia. But in the ancient time, there are famous philosophers and historians that they visit Olympia, and some of them they reported, like Pythagoras, Thales of Miletus, Herodot, Thucydides. They are the father and of the history. Socrates of Athens and Plato and Xenophon. There are different historians and philosophers that for centuries, starting from the 6th century BC, that have visited Olympia and reported. And some of them also they presented their work in Olympia. So these ancient texts, there are a source of information for the ancient Olympic Games.
So lots of different sources, and the way that we
Yeah.
learn new things changes as new
Yeah.
technologies become available as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So,
Thank you.
so I mean, you asked this question about what can be done, and in the future, something which is very interesting is about the infrastructure of ancient Olympia, because the excavations always had been dedicated to a certain area, and we know that there had been so many people coming to Olympia and visiting Olympia, because there is also a say in antiquity that once in your lifetime you should have visited Olympia, and you can imagine what it means that everybody tries who had the means and can go there to go to ancient Olympia. And you have to imagine that the people they came there, they were in tents and in ephemeric settlements there, and all around Olympia. So probably the valley of the valley of Olympia, it was filled with people, and we only know a small thing about this. So it must be very interesting to do some more examinations outside this area, and the archaeologists, they started to do this, but we can imagine that something else will be discovered there.
I think you're probably right. And that actually speaks very well to a question that was just posted in the chat. How might our understanding of the ancient Olympic Games change if historical evidence was written primarily by women, enslaved people, defeated athletes, or non-Greek observers? So adding those different perspectives, and how would that change what we know? I think it's a fascinating topic to think about.
It is.
Well, if I can pivot for a moment, I'd love to talk a little bit about sort of the structure of the ancient games. How do we know it was every 4 years, and do we know why it was every 4 years rather than an annual competition?
Kostas, me or
Either
Yes,
one of
please.
you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. So the 4 years competition. So first of all, you needed time because you have to invite the people to come to Olympia. So there had been heralds which had been sent out from ancient Olympia, and they reached out to the entire world, and they were talking to the different city states, because in ancient times each city states was a political organization in itself. So you went to the next of them, This, of course, they invited to the Olympic Games, and then they had something which Kostas already mentioned, the Ekechairia, so which was the holy peace, or the holy time when the people could travel to Olympia, and this all takes time, and this happened every 4 years.
That makes sense. Do we know any of the athletes who competed in the games? And do we know about what sports they were competing in?
Actually, we know many of the athletes because we have lists of the athletes that competed in the antiquity, and they are called Olympioniki or Olympic winners from 8th century BC until the 4th century AD. There were more than 4,760 winners in the ancient Olympic Games. And the first list that was created by a local philosopher Hippias from Elis. So in the 4th century BC, he reported about the Olympic winners in the ancient time. Then we have another Phlegon from Trallis that in the 2nd century that he also give us a list with winners. And the last, in the modern time, Moretti, he reported about 832 winners in the ancient Olympic Games. From Pausanias, the traveler, that he visited Olympia in the 2nd century AD, he's reporting about around 200 victory statues that he has seen in Olympia. So we have, I would say, a lot of information about, quite a lot of information about the winners. They were Olympic winners who were aristocrats. They have aristocratic origins, but we know some of them that they were goat shepherds or farmers, like Polymnestor from Milet, from the Milesian, and Glafkos from Charistos, who was in Pharma. But from the other side, we have information about winners like Philip II, the king of Macedonia, that he won in the chariot race and in the Hippic Games. Also, we know about Olympic heroes that won several times in the Olympic Games, like Leonidas from Rhodes. He won in the stadium, Diavlos, and armor race 12 times. So we have a lot of information. So there is a list there. Milon from Croton in wrestling six times. The Agoras, who was Periodonikis, that means he won in all 4 important games of Greece, the Panhellenic Games, in Olympic Games, in Pythia Games, in Nemea Games, and in Isthmia Games. We have quite a lot information. The Agoras is one of the most famous athletes, and his family, because his daughter Fereniki or Kalipatira tried to go and observe the Olympic Games. There is also a story behind that.
Gosh, that is fascinating to think about people who competed in multiple games and all their backgrounds. So thank you. I really appreciate that. I was also curious, were there requirements to compete in the games? We have Olympic trials today. Was there anything along those lines in the ancient games?
What we know is that the participants of the Olympics, there are clear measurements to be chosen for the Olympics. So First of all, you had to go to Elis. Elis was already mentioned and was the city who was responsible to organize the Olympic Games. So the athletes, they had to go to Elis, and then they had to compete in Elis during a time of 1 month. And this was something like a market to choose the best one, who will then afterwards go to Olympia and participate there. So, but you can imagine that also something happens before that. And we know that there had been some highly professional trainees and stables for athletes, specifically in southern Italy. So, for example, somebody who already had been mentioned was Milan of Croton. So Croton was a city in southern Italy, and Croton was very famous for the amount of athletes who participated in Olympia. And we know that for a certain time, specifically in the 6th and early in the 7th and 6th century, many people, many athletes, they came from Sicily. You have to imagine those had been the colonies of mainland Greece, like America in the 19th century towards Europe. So those people, they came to the old world, which was Olympia and the Greek mainland, and they show their wealth and also their competencies. So therefore, we have a lot of winners from those times. And what we also have, and this is interesting for those who had been in Olympia before, we have a lot there's a big terrace, and on top of the terrace, there are some houses. There are treasure houses. Most of them, they had been erected by the cities also from the colonies in specifically in southern Italy. So those people, they came back to Olympia and they showed to the old world what they achieved. So there are some papers about this regarding also a comparison between Canada and America and the old world. And that's quite interesting. But this happened very, very often. And I only wanted to tell this story because it's quite interesting how Olympia brought all the Greeks, starting from the Greeks who lived in Spain until the Greeks who lived in the Black Sea, to bring them together to Olympia. This is very, very important and shows a little bit the importance of Olympia.
Yeah.
And only to mention this, and then I will stop. Olympia was not the only sanctuary where those pan-Hellenic, so for all Greeks, games took place. There had been some others, like in Delphi, like in Nemea, like in Delphi and Nemea and Isthmia, celebrations like this. So they brought all the Greeks together, and it became a real market for athletes, for politics, and it was a market of news as well in the same time. So this all happened, and you cannot imagine how important this was. This was the main place to be.
So the ancient games were serving lots of different purposes throughout different facets of life.
Yes.
May I add that they were requirements to participate, and they were in Olympia the law guardians. They were called nomothete, that they teach the Hellanodiken. The Hellanodiken, that it means the justice of the Greeks, and they were responsible for the organization of the Olympic Games. So the athletes, they had to be in Elis 1 or 3 months. We have two different sources about that before the Olympic Games, and they had trained with the priest before they participated in the Olympic Games. So they had to be Greek also, the father and the mother. So all those who participated, they were Greeks. There were requirements there for the participation of the athletes.
Gosh, that's really interesting. So how I'm hearing so many parallels between the ancient games and the modern games today. How did the archaeological excavations at ancient Olympia influence the revival of the modern games?
Actually, I would say a lot because the excavations in Olympia they started in 1875, and the first Olympic Congress was in 1894. The father of Baron Pierre de Coubertin, he was a friend of Greece, Philhellenes, belonged to this aristocratic club of people that they were following everything that happens in Greece. And of course, at that time in Greece, we had National Olympic Games, the Zapas Olympic Games, which were organized four times. Also, the same time, we had another Philhellene in lava of Greece was William Benning Brooks, who started in the parallel time Olympic Games in England. On this parallel two games, they come together because we know that Pierre de Coubertin, when he was young, he visited England, he met William Benning Brooks, and I would say it was the first time that an old man that William Benning Brooks was at that time, around 80 years old, he spoke with a young man about the Olympic Games. But also Pierre de Coubertin, through his studies, he studied in a Jesuit school and also in one of the best political schools, universities in France, which was created in his time, one of the most important universities, I would say. He learned about the ancient Olympic Games, and he was, because he wanted to reform the educational system in England, in France. He was thinking about the Olympic Games as a way to change the educational system in his country. I would say that he was a theorist, so creating a new theory, how to bring people together in the new time, using internationalism and democracy to bring the people together. And the Olympic Games were a mean for him to bring people together. So also I started with excavations. They were really important because you can imagine that when they excavated ancient Olympia and the temples of Hera and the temple of Zeus, and they found one of the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful statues, the statue of Hermes, of Praxiteles. This statue was in every newspaper at that time, and everyone was interested, not just only the archaeologists about that, also the historians, the philosophers, those who were involved in sport to learn more about the ancient Olympic Games, those who were involved in pedagogy and the influence of sport to educate people. So all these ideas influenced Baron Pierre de Coubertin, and I think he was the right man, the right moment to revive and to connect all these local efforts to revive the Olympic Games.
So if those were some of his people...
Can I add something?
Sure.
I add something to that? Yeah.
Of course.
Because there are two things which I think it's very, very important to underline. First of all, the excavation had been an excavation done by the German Reich. And the German Prussian Reich, they took out the excavation and they were extremely keen to promote them. So they went to the newspaper every day. There was a new finding. They immediately telegraphed the finding to Berlin. They translated everything in different languages and they sent it out to the world. So they were very keen to show to the entire world what they did and how successful they are. And Baron Pierre de Coubertin was very interested, even though he was a young man. And in the Congress in 1889, he visited a very important design of ancient Olympia. It was the first design which was done in the Petit Palais in Paris, in life size. It was a reconstruction of the whole ancient Olympia. And this is very important because Pierre de Coubertin saw it. He saw it there, and he must have been very fascinated, aside all the other things which Costas mentioned. So this is a small side story which only underlines a little bit the things said before.
Thank you, Christian. May I add that also the excavations in Delphi, they started a few years later by the French archaeological school, and they have found there in the Temple of Apollo the hymn of Apollo, which was presented for the first time by a core of people in the first International Congress in 1894. It was also very important for Baron Pierre de Coubertin to start the Olympic Congress, the first international Congress, which started on 16th of June in 1894 with a hymn to the Apollo. So excavations, they play a very important role also for the revival of the Olympic Games, I would say.
So you were talking a lot about Pierre de Coubertin's goals in restarting the modern games. Do you think he was successful now that we're 130 years later and the games are this worldwide global movement?
I would say that the Olympic Games, yeah, he was successful. I said that Baron Pierre de Coubertin was an theorist. He created a new movement, an excellent movement, focused in education. We can see that in the beginning to promote physical education. In the beginning, for people, the low classes to participate in the Olympic Games, because that was also one of the aims. The layborns and all the others, they could participate in the Olympic Games. To organize this event every 4 years, we have in participation of more than 206 national Olympic committees in the Olympic Games. That is something that is very important. There are more national Olympic committees in the Olympic Games than recognized countries that there are in United Nations. The International Olympic Academy is created and supporting the Olympic movement. Olympic education is more and more important through the Olympic movement and the IOC. I would say he would be happy to see all that this movement is really strong, and I would say is one of the strongest soft powers in the world to promote internationalism and peace and friendship and excellence worldwide, in which all the countries participate.
All those Olympic values that we hear about.
Yeah, but even though it took some time to get there, so when Coubertin started and when the first Congress took place in '94, there was a big discussion where the games should take place, and as most of us know, so at the end, for various reasons, we cannot go into details about this, but it was chosen Athens, and this was extremely important because the second edition in Paris was not very visible. And the decision in St. Louis was not very visible for the Olympic movement. So Athens was, and the intermediate games 10 years after Athens, the 1906 games, but this is my personal opinion, they were the kickoff. They were the real kickoff to start the movement to go forward. And only in 1912, let's say, we have everything settled in a way that it really can grade up. So he needs some time, but he was obviously he had enough he had enough breath to wait for this and see his successes latest in 1912.
I think that makes sense. There were a lot of maybe false starts is a good way to put it. So if the founders of the ancient games and Pierre de Coubertin could meet today, what aspects of the Olympic movement do you think they would admire, and what would they encourage us to change?
Actually, I said that before they will admire the participation of every country, the movement that is really a strong movement promoting uh, uh, I would not say peace, but in a symbolic way, become one of the most important soft powers in the world to promote peace. The social role of the IOC, that is another of the Olympic movement, and the IOC, Pierre de Coubertin used to say that to be an elite is not enough. You must be a knight to contribute to the society. And also, I would say the Olympic movement for centuries, for 1 century now, it promotes the idea of balance of mind and body, and he would be also proud if Olympic truths would be more uh, successful.
What they probably also might admire is the educational tasks of the modern Olympics, because we did not speak about education in the ancient times, but the gymnasium is something which is extremely important. And there was even a huge gymnasium in ancient Olympia. And the gymnasium is always the place where physical and philosophical education took place. So there was a merge of those things. And for antiquity, you cannot separate the things. So therefore, there is a gymnasium where you had the chance to do latest training before the event starts in ancient Olympia. But this is also the place, and I told the story about the fencer, who showed his new tricks. He performed these things inside the gymnasium. So this was the place where the people met, where the people discussed, because it's always part of the big philosophical idea of antiquity to be the first and to be the best. And this is an ideal. And this also applies to the ancient Olympic Games, because we did not speak about this, but only the first one got the wreath, not the other ones. Everybody else was a loser. So to be kalos kagatos, to be the first and really the virtual one, this is very important. And this was the ancient. And what we have in modern times, it's an individual and also an inclusive way of education. I guess they, at least if they would not admire this in ancient times, they could learn of it.
I think that's
Yeah,
great.
in the symbolic way, you can feel that also today. If you visit the ancient gymnasium and you are inside of the ancient gymnasium, can you imagine in the antiquity that inside of this gymnasium they were sitting young people from Sparta and Athens that all the time they were in the war, but was also in place. The ancient gymnasium is in place to teach people values, to be together, to live together, and learn some values there. So that was very important at that time. The same we have the same in the modern Olympic Village. There are different nations living there, even nations that there are in war, and the athletes they communicate. They are sitting together. They have meals together. Sometimes they celebrate together. I have experienced that many times in the International Olympic Academy, when we have all the young ambassadors and the participants from worldwide. It's like an ancient gymnasium. Actually, Pierre de Coubertin used to say that we have revived the Olympic Games, but not the ancient gymnasium, and was one of the reasons that the National Olympic Academy was created. So we have young people from all over the world, sometimes from these areas that there are in the war, and these people, there are women and men that are sitting together and discuss. So they accept the invitation, they are there, and if you accept the invitation, then you communicate, you discuss with the people, and if you discuss with people, we learn from the others, we hear them, so you start to, in some way, to negotiate, and that is and it's a form of diplomacy, of to find political solutions. So it's the gymnasium, the ancient gymnasium, but also the modern Olympic Village. There is and the Olympic Games. There is a school of peace, I would say. There is not you do not sign peace contracts, but you educate the people, the humanity, to live peaceful together.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. We are coming close to the end of our time, and there's been a lot of great questions posted in the chat, so I do want to try to get to one or two of those. And the first one I'd like to ask is, this is specifically for you, Christian. Professor Roland Renson characterized Theodorus Antonides' 1732 book on Olympia as a most valuable missing link between the ancient and modern games. So the question is, do you share this view, and where do you see the missing link fitting into the International Olympic canon?
Yeah. Okay. Of course, we know this book very well because we published this book on our website, and but this is only one of the missing links. I would say it goes back until the time of the Renaissance time, because this was the time when Greek and Roman antiquity was rediscovered. And there's another book which the first edition is from 1538 or something. This is Mercurialis. This is about all the disciplines in ancient Olympics, because for the first time, those sources had been read again. And there had been a series of books which had been published, starting in the 16th century until the 19th century, rediscovering the ancient Olympics. So this is only one missing link. It's an important missing link, but those books in different languages which had been coming by those times, which had been coming by those times, they are the links which are important. And Mercurialis, again, 200 years before Antonides, is something very, very important as well.
It's hard to imagine just one missing link from such a wide time period. So I appreciate the context that there's a series. So, another question, we've had a couple questions about women in the ancient games, if they were allowed to be spectators, and in the case of women who owned chariot teams, if their team was victorious, were they proclaimed Olympic champions? So can either of you speak about the role of women in the ancient games?
So I can do this.
Yes,
no,
please,
Kostas. No, go, because I just
no. The Olympic competition were primary for the free Greek men, but and married women were traditionally excluded. Although we have the Heraian games in Olympia, which they were organized every 4 years, also every 4 years in Olympia, and it was a foot race for virgin women in different ages. We had different categories. We know that they were dressed special clothing, which is reported by Pausanias, And we know that also the winners received a crown of olive and a portion of meat sacrificed to the Hera. Also, they had the right and they were allowed to dedicate the statues with their name in Olympia. And the sponsors of the Heraean Games, they were usually women. The traditions go back to Hippotamia. The Hippotamia, he was the daughter of Inomaus. So most of this information comes to us from Pausanias. Probably Christian would mention about Kiniska. Kiniska, she was also an Olympian, an Olympic winner from Sparta, because he participated in the chariot races. And we know another Velistiche from Macedonia, another woman that she also was Olympic winner in the Olympic in the ancient Olympic Games, because the winners of the chariot were the owners of the horses.
And only I don't only very quickly. This what Kostas told us. Those are glimpses of information which we have by our sources, and this all goes back to a very big topic, which is the topic of the origin of the sanctuary. So we have some hints which shows us that the mother goddesses, they played an important role in the very old times, and we have glimpses that women in racing are quite important. And this is only a promotional slot for the topic in the Journal of Olympic History. If you go to the website, and I wrote an article about the participation of women in ancient Olympics, and then you can read the details about this. Sorry for that.
No, not at all. I appreciate that. There are lots of great articles in that journal. So I encourage everyone to go on the website and give them a look. So, well, we are just about out of time here. So before I thank everyone for being here today, are there any final thoughts that the two of you would like to share about the Olympic Games, ties to the modern games, what we hope to learn, any of the things we've talked about today? Any final thoughts?
Actually, we had not women participating in the first International Olympic Games in Athens in 1896. The first women that participated in the modern Olympic Games, they were in the second Olympic Games in Paris in 1900, and more officially, I would say in 1908 in the London Olympic Games. We see an increase of the women participation in Stockholm Olympic Games. And finally, after Baron Pierre de Coubertin left as president in 1927, and Baillet Latour became the third president, because the first one was Dimitrios Vikelas, the second Pierre de Coubertin, and the third Baillet Latour, we see and really increasing the number of the women participation in the modern Olympic Games. They took part in track and field events in 1928, but that is connected also with the creation of the International Women Federation for the National Olympic Games for women. So we see that the number of women in the Olympic Games is increasing since 1928.
And I have also a final say. I only wanted to say, if you have not had the chance to visit ancient Olympia and travel to Greece, it's very important to do this. I mean, in our days, you find everything. You have masses of YouTube videos about the ancient Olympic and everything. But if you go there and you breathe the spirit of the place there, then you really understand what happened 3,000 years ago. And it's a piece which helps you to understand also the fascination about the modern Olympics. And therefore, this is the only thing I wanted to say towards the end.
And I would add, Christian, that if they visit ancient Olympia and the archaeological site, they have to visit also the International Olympic Academy to feel and live, experience also Olympism as a new philosophy of life.
Excellent. So we all have some homework to do. It's time for everyone to travel to Greece. Well, I want to thank you both so much for being part of this conversation today. This really has been fascinating, and I really appreciate both of you sharing your time and your expertise with us. There has been some fantastic conversation going on in the chat and some excellent questions that I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to. I also would like to thank our audience for joining us today. Programs like Games History Hour are only possible because of your support, and we really appreciate you giving your time to be here. Donations and memberships to the museum help us to continue offering these conversations free of charge and expand the ways that we share Olympic and Paralympic stories with the world. So if you would like to support this work, you can do so on the museum website, USOPM.org/donate. I think that'll probably be dropped in the chat here in the next few seconds. I'm also excited to share that the museum is opening a new exhibit next month titled Legacy of Victory, U.S. Olympic Decathletes. The exhibit will open with a special reception on September 23rd for members and donors. All museum members are invited, so this is your chance to become a member today and be among the first to explore this new exhibit. So thank you again so much for joining us. Thank you to Christian and to Kostas, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you in the next Games History Hour.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.